Hello and welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. We're going to continue this old money series on class hierarchies with authoritarian regimes and how class hierarchy works in modern authoritarian regimes such as China, Russia, the Saudi royal family, etc. We did our last one about America, and that kind of got a little bit icebergy real quick. So I wouldn't really be surprised if this one did too. And before I get into this is a disclosure. This is a theory. It's not a hardline fact on class structures around the world. Social pyramids across society differ in significant ways and change over time. Especially with these, because authoritarian regimes aren't always authoritarian regimes. This hierarchy maybe will work to explain Spain, for example, during the Franco era, but it would not really explain the hierarchy in Spain today because it's no longer an authoritarian regime. Or this explains what Venezuela is like now, but it does not explain what it was 20 years ago. So let's look at the authoritarian regimes. Look, it's similar actually a lot to the America chart in the shape that it's a dual pyramid structure. However, what's really different is the segments within the dual pyramid structure and how one of the segments is cut off before it plateaus. But let's start at the bottom and work our way up. The bottom is the underclass. Since a lot of these regimes really don't have the wealth to provide the generous social benefits that the United States and other developed economies do, these were mainly people who just participate outside the formal economy, whether that's due to subsistence farming or black market activities or whatever. They find some way to survive without participating in the formal economy. And some of the more wealthy authoritarian regimes, they could also be wards of the state. The next level is the working class. The working class are similar to the working class in the United States, except they have a lower base standard of living. A working class in an emerging market country is somebody who makes $10 a day, whereas somebody in the working class in the United States, instead of making $10 to $20 a day, like an emerging market working class, they make $10 to $20 an hour. So it's a very different base living standard as a result. But these people are not, they have some disposable income and they're in the formal economy and pay taxes and have some sort of stake in the system. Maintaining control over this group was key to keeping the authoritarian regime alive. And because if these people, enough of them get angry and challenge, that's what triggers the civil unrest to topple this order. And there are professional classes that can rise out of the working class through education mainly, or entrepreneurial dynamism. And you can have two sides of this. There is the independent professional class, who are people who do it without participating in politics in any sort of way or working for the government or any ties to the regime. And then there are people who do it through being connected to the ruling party, whether that's working for the government as a bureaucrat or having a business that primarily serves the government, or using connections within there to establish one's livelihood. Then the next level up on the establishment pyramid is the well-connected wealthy. In theory, you could move up the next generation if the party-connected professional class moves up the ranks and is successful enough. They may be able to get control of the permitting rights for a certain industry, and their next generation can be the well-connected wealthy. Or these are friends of the party leaders or family members. Like an example I do is like in China. Say if you were the head of the Department of Motor Vehicles for Beijing, and you were in charge of giving out the licenses to who's allowed to have a Mercedes-Benz dealership in downtown Beijing, or maybe in all of Greater Beijing. What you would do is that since you can't profit off that yourself, because that would be corruption and graft, you can give the license to your nephew or your niece in exchange that they will be able to get very wealthy on it, and they will support you in your older years and make sure that you're comfortable for doing them the favor. That's the example of the well-connected wealthy. Most of the wealthy in these authoritarian regimes did not really get there just based on hard work and grit. They got there generally through being connected through the government some way or the other and getting some sort of fair deal to operate in an uncompetitive way. As noticed, there's no old money in the authoritarian regimes because any sort of old money is often tied to the previous regime, and therefore they are a threat to the current regime's legitimacy. So these people either have to flee their country or they're killed. So that is why there's, like in the American example, the old money is in the establishment elite, or if they disgrace themselves enough, they get kicked out into the counter elite. Whereas with the authoritarian regime, they just don't exist. They were killed off during regime change. Then the top is the leadership of the party, the people who run the authoritarian regime. The other side, like for the independent professional class, is that if one of them tries to rise beyond just being an independent professional class, they are flagged as a challenger by the party leaders. This is an example of what happened in China with their crackdown on a lot of the big tech companies there. The party leadership didn't like seeing private citizens having more wealth or social influence than the party. So the party cut them down and showed them who's boss. And this is generally what happens in these regimes. If somebody gains enough wealth or influence independently of the regime's infrastructure, the regime will use the legal system or violent force to take them out, or try to bribe them to integrate into the latter. And so that's why I see all the challengers as like a green circle with a sword stuck through it, because if anybody gets big enough to be a challenger status, they'll be dealt with. They'll be sent back down to the working class, or just no longer on this earth, or be integrated into the party. So that's the whole reason why the authoritarian regime model works, is because they take out the challengers before they get too big to be a challenger that has a real threat. If, say, like a foreign government backs a challenger, or the challenger does somehow manage to not be taken down and fight through this system, then they can break through and they will knock off the leaders of the authoritarian regime and often become the leaders of a new authoritarian regime, and or transition away to a more democratic society. Examples of this would be like color revolutions in a lot of these authoritarian countries. A more happy example could be like Nelson Mandela in South Africa, with the help of foreign support, was able to become a challenger. That is kind of the way authoritarian regimes are structured. That's why a lot of their power is based on force or the threat of force. So the military is often in the ranks of party leaders, the party-connected professional class, and the well-connected wealthy have a disproportionate amount of military veterans as a percentage of those classes. And that is why a lot of when these regimes do get in trouble, there often are military coups to help stabilize things. The example would be like the Shinawatra controversy in Thailand. Even though Thailand's not completely a authoritarian regime, there are some authoritarian elements to it. Let me know what you think. I'm going to do these for emerging market societies that are not authoritarian. I'm going to do one for Europe as well. Let me know what you think. If you have any disagreements on how the authoritarian regime social model works, feel free to comment. And if you like this type of content, like and subscribe and share with your friends. Thanks for watching.